Festwochen-Podcast mit Clarissa Stadler und Nada El-Azar. Die Wiener Festwochen danken ihren Hauptsponsoren Erste Bank und Wiener Städtische.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the very first episode of the official Wiener Festwochen podcast. My name is Nada El-Azar.
And I am Clarissa Stadler.
We are starting off with our first guest, who is none other than the director of this festival, Christophe Slagmuylder. Welcome.
Vielen Dank.
Christophe, the motto of this year's edition is predictably unpredictable. It's of course a reference to the current situation, but it has almost become a leitmotif of your relation to this festival. Right from the beginning, when you took over, you had to improvise and organize the whole festival within only 4 months, which is a very short time in this business. And right when you finished planning, the pandemic came. How good are you at improvising by now?
You know, I would be happy one day if I can make indeed an edition, eine Ausgabe in a normal condition. Because since I arrived in Vienna, indeed, I had to jump in a way into a festival that was like, in a kind of transition, and very quickly do my first edition. That was in 2019, indeed, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
May 19.
You took over 18 and your first edition was 19.
Exactly. I arrived actually in Vienna in September, and then in December on the same year we need to be ready for a festival in May.
It was crazy, I can remember.
Very crazy, but your question was about this, how good I am in this unpredictability. It became a kind, as you said, it's a leitmotif for me this year for this festival, but it's a kind of motto also. Not only for me, I have the feeling that we will all need to embrace the unpredictability and to cope with it, because I have a bit the feeling that it's going to be our reality. Maybe it's time to see the positive aspects, if it can, of unpredictability, of not having to plan and to control everything.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say, because I mean, another word for unpredictability is chaos, and there are good things stemming from chaos.
Yeah, these crises that we don't know exactly if we are going to go through, and when. Something is quite sure for many of us. Maybe it's a good moment not to try absolutely to come back to the situation where we were before. Maybe it's there's many to learn from it, and maybe to reset a lot of stuffs, and accepting maybe a different kind of temporality.
And maybe also potentials we never knew that we had them. I'm just thinking of the director Sergei Brennikov, who recently did a whole opera from Moscow, imprisoned from long distance, which is amazing, I think. So maybe we all have to learn to not only feel imprisoned and isolated, but do something
to make more of chaos.
Yeah, I think it's really a lot about how can it be positive. How can we? I like this association of the two words, to embrace unpredictability, to make that we are. It's an accomplice. It's no more an enemy. It's not something.
So our best friend already, yeah. But we didn't choose.
We did not choose it. It was not a choice. Let's try to make something out of it now. And I think, as you said, we have no choice.
Okay.
I can't imagine you to be a control freak at all by now.
That's my reputation.
I'm just thinking. I wanted to know, how far have the restrictions coming with Corona, how much have they impacted your choice of productions?
I mean, a lot, of course. First of all, I've never been so much busy with practicalities and rescheduling and understanding what is allowed, what is not allowed, what. It's very tiring. I miss so much talking with people sometimes about arts, about visions, about the possibility of projecting. We are so much in the moment present because we have to resolve problems. We are sticking a lot. And this is the most terrible for me, because something I like a lot in my job is to be able to envision and to project things. I also believe a lot that good art, and the black box of a theater is a space really where you can really open up actually a space that is only possible to take place there on a stage. It's really a place to envision things and to project. And the most for me affective, but not in a good sense, what I feel at the moment is this restriction of not being able to really see much more than 2 weeks ahead, and this I have difficulty to accept. I also don't see much art, as you can imagine, only in front of my screen. I feel very dry. I need really to be inspired, and also in my job, actually traveling was an important part, not only because it's nice to travel, but I think it's very good to see how people are doing things in other places and being confronted with other contexts. And this I miss a lot, and I have also no solution about the future, because it's also something that we will have to change, probably another temporality, another mobility. Though stay more local is not, I think, the only and ultimate solution. I think we really need this confrontation with the outside, because at the moment my space is quite small. And I think that in a way the impact will be much more on a longer term for 22, 23, because there's not so much work that has been produced the last months. We did not travel, we did not see much. So at the moment we can still in a way use the kind of knowledge that we have, or a kind of fond that is there. But it's more like for the future that I have the feeling that the consequences of this crisis are still to come.
Mm-hmm. But let's not only talk about the restrictions, let's also talk about this wonderful program. On the one hand, the festival focuses on interdisciplinary approaches and creative crossovers. And to me, one of the most striking examples this year is, of course, René Polisch's Die Gewehre der Frau Katrin Angerer, which seems to be an experiment on operette. A truly Viennese genre, but how did the operette become a so-called Tanzfilm? Because that's what I read in the program. Can you tell us a bit more about this project?
Yeah, but let's say first what I really like to do with the Festwochen is maybe trying to bring some artists in a kind of territory that they would not at first instance go there. Mm-hmm. I think we can, as a festival, I don't have a house, I don't have a specific venue to program. I think it's a space where I really like to say René Polisch, you can use that space not to do your next régie like you would do in Academy Theater or in another theater, but if you do something for the Festwochen, what can it be? Maybe an experiment, something you would like to try one day. And of course, because the festival and Vienna in general has this long tradition with Musiktheater und Oper, that was my first question to René. Something with music, opera maybe, and opera, no, he didn't want at all. But why not an operette? Why not going into this kind of subgenre or this more popular genre of opera? That's how it started. But of course, it's the kind of artist you can never tell him what he has to do. And after a few months, it became also something totally different. That's also
Polish and operette. I'm really looking forward to that. It really sounds cool.
Yeah. What I was really like is how he can appropriate a kind of commission and totally transform and make it his own, because I think we will have something that I cannot tell you. Actually, I cannot answer your question, because it's this kind of artist so
unpredictable.
So I think he's very excited to have this Bühne of the Theater der Wien for him, and this tradition of the Theater der Wien, and now he's coming much more about this idea of a Tanzfilm inspired by the flash dance and fame and kind of choreography and chorus line. So yeah, in a way it's this kind of try that I think is really precious for me, because a festival should be this kind of place where artists are trying things, and there could be this kind of surprises.
And another nice example Nada and I found is, of course, Burt Turido, an opera by the Nature Theatre of Oklahoma. They are coming back again, so to say, back to Vienna. And the program says they fuse country and Western music with the classical opera The Flying Dutchman by Richard Wagner. That sounds very promising and great fun too.
Absolutely. And that was not at all something we asked them to do. For instance, it arrived at the same time that René is also working on this idea of the operette. And I also like this kind of coincidences. Nature Theatre of Oklahoma is a company quite famous in Vienna, I think, no, because they did some Regie in Academy Theater as well years ago. They did this movie not so long ago based on on a Jelinek novel. So they have this relationship with Vienna, and I thought, they also want to work around this genre of opera. That could be a nice combination.
I think they fit very well to Wiener Festwochen and also to Viennese spirit.
Yes.
Spirit of a special spirit.
Yeah.
Because I think that's going to be great fun. So we were talking about the crossover part, but of course I think one crucial interest of yours is to, I don't want to say fuse, but maybe interpret classical Viennese music like Mozart, Schönberg and Mahler in a completely new way. Maybe you would like to talk about that.
Yes. That's, I did other festivals before working here in Vienna. And here, it's also for me an opportunity not to do the thing I'm used to do, but I'm very also interested to understand what could correspond also to this specific festival, the Wiener Festwochen. I did not know Vienna so well before I worked here, but something that was very striking me in a way is of course the presence of the tradition, the presence of a certain musical tradition which is at every corner. In a way, I exaggerate a little bit, but when you're in Vienna, the presence of music is huge. For me, it was very important to reflect on that and not to say, I don't want to ignore that and just to do my stuff or to let's be contemporary. Mm-hmm. And I think the best way, if you want to get also an audience with you, is also in a way to start from something they know, yeah. And in a certain way they feel related to. And how from there you can again bring somebody somewhere else, because there's a lot of beauty in tradition. I mean, it's not only a question of thinking about how this thing is passé, is old-fashioned. It's about what can this thing also mean today? Why is it still present nowadays? And which kind of significance, which kind of relevance, which kind of new beauty also that we did not know before. And
I think it's also new to many Viennese people. I mean, I'm not talking about Mozart, but I think Schönberg and Mahler, not many people are so used to listen to that every day. So it's also an adventure for many people like us who do not listen to that every day.
But it's true, it's a little bit from me, it's the 70 years of the festival this year. And by choosing Das Lied von der Herde, Pierrot Lunaire, it's a bit, you're right, it's not the most easy pieces. I mean, definitely not Pierrot Lunaire of Schönberg, but it has a kind of iconic statue. It's, let's say, a bit the beginning of this Sprechstimme, Sprechgesang of Schönberg. So it has this kind of historical significance. And I think it's very exciting to ask artists for whom it's a totally unknown terrain to do something with it. But also, of course, it's not at random. The person who is working on Pierrot Lunaire, she's just an amazing artist. I'm crazy over her work, Marlene Montero Freitas. And I see very well a connection in a certain way between her own universe and this kind of score of Schönberg. It's really something that I feel there is a match there. Mm-hmm. She did not get this opportunity yet, but let's do that, and let's bring also excellent musicians, a super good dirigent who will also help her, because we are in Vienna. We cannot allow ourselves to do it a little bit cheap or cheesy. If you do Pierrot Lunaire, it should be also top quality.
You should, yeah.
Even if you experiment, if it's Marlène, but better to give her the best also tools and weapons, even to work on it. And that's I enjoy that a lot. I must say here at the festival is how you can create this kind of also new conditions for an artist, but excellent conditions. I must say I expect a lot of this Pierrot. They are rehearsing now, and it looks really something.
And das Lied der Erde, it's not an easy piece, but it's a very interesting piece, because it's, I had to read that, to be honest, but it's based on a, I think, Chinese poem. I didn't know that, to be honest.
Super beautiful as well, super beautiful. Both, I mean, it's very different kind of music, but both are based on poems. So it's not narrative, you don't have storylines, which is great for the artists, because also they don't have so much restrictions there's no plot. You can, in a way, bring your own fiction in it, but it's not abstract. There are really some characters. So Das Lied von der Erde, it's really different songs about nature. Super beautiful structure, because Pierrot is always very short songs, but Das Lied von der Erde, I think you have 5 or 6 different songs. Some of them it's 3 minutes, but you have one, the last one, the Abschied, which is like close to 30 minutes. It's really this. And here we ask Philippe Ken to work with this score, with this music. And why? Because Ken is an artist who worked a lot around the idea of landscapes. He's a visual artist. Also, he's doing a lot of Bühnenbild, and always incredible in terms of relationship to nature. How do you create a natural atmosphere, or let's say environment, through artificial means? So he's really doing something. I think it's going to be quite beautiful, this Das Lied von der Erde. I tend to think about sometimes Friedrich, the paintings, the landscape of Caspar David Friedrich, this idea also of we are watching a landscape, but we are not anymore part of it. We are more and more actually disconnected with nature.
Yes.
And in a way, I don't like to be so literal, but this piece is going to be also a very, let's say, ecological message about our relationship to nature, and question of sustainability and the disappearance of nature. But it's also Mahler. It's also an Inszenierung of a beautiful piece of Mahler, but it's a very also, I think, relevant piece about contemporary problematics, I would say.
A lot of international art festivals have become some kind of, globally traveling circus with the same old names popping up everywhere. We were just mentioning some of the bigger names, but you're also giving newcomers an excellent opportunity to put their projects out there. One theater production that really sprung into my eye was by the Iranian director Azadeh Shahmiri, called Quasi, and it's focusing on the daily life of young people who are experiencing oppression and looking for their identity. And another thing was Swan Song, a solo performance by the South African director Bulen Gaba. She picks out the struggle of girlhood turning into adulthood as one of its central themes. What are you looking for when it comes to trend scouting and finding all these young aspiring artists?
Well, I think first a good festival is also this balance between so-called references, more established names, and on the other hand, we should really constantly work on a kind of a confrontation actually between these references and newcomers. My best compliment I always said was from Castellucci one day, when he said, "When I come to your festival, I feel stressed because I'm next to another generation, and I'm pretty sure that actually they have something that I don't have myself, or I don't have it anymore." So I think it's very about creating sometimes a dialogue, but also a certain tension, that you don't say, these are the highlights, these are the best, and this is what it is. But I think how you create, I really like a lot to to talk about a program as an ensemble, as something that you should perceive as a whole. And even if you don't find a very clear theme in my program. It's not that this program is about this or about that, but every piece of the puzzle has a reason to be there. And there is a certain, for me, sense in this kind of interaction between, it's a question of generation, absolutely. It's a question of context, where you are from, where do you work from? Very important for me, and not only to have a central Western point of view, but how I think the role of the Festwochen is definitely to bring internationality to Vienna, and it's going to be not easy also with this COVID thing that we were talking. I mean, how you can still keep this relationship to artists working in Tehran today. Incredible, actually, theater in Tehran, for instance. It's really a society where theater plays a very major role. People are going a lot into theater. There's a whole scene, and that's very important that it's set and it's there next to Polesch or whatever, Heinrich Goebbels.
So do you go to Tehran and screen the scene, so to say, or how do you find the people?
Yes. I was used to travel a lot. I mean, I was used because since 1 year and a half, it's totally different. But I was used to travel a lot and to develop networks of people who can really inform you about the situation. Who are spying for you. Yes. Or you have some good festivals, some references, some space, also that you know how. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So you set out your people everywhere, and they just kind of recommend to you, I've seen this, I've seen that, and then
as you said, I'm a bit of a control freak, so I need to see myself. It's terrible, even if it's not about not trusting, but it's so much something I feel important with live art is yourself, to see things, to meet the person. I can never imagine invite an artist that I never met, that I don't know, because it's so much about persons also, and not only the piece, but who are you? Where do you live? To understand the work, it's also so much about knowing the person. And I cannot imagine my job doing it only through files that I received by emails or video link, but it's so much about being there. Also, sometimes the spectators, the way a spectator reacts to a piece in Tehran, super interesting for your own perception. That's why I miss so much sitting in a theater nowadays, I must say, because it's not only the frame of the stage, let's say, it's so much the whole atmosphere. I think the people around you, the silence, the noise, the breathing, it tells you a lot, actually, also about I know it's not your question and I tend to talk a lot, but it's also sometimes very interesting to see a piece and you feel, wow, it's great, but this I cannot bring to Vienna, or I would not bring in Vienna, though you feel that in Tehran, for instance, it's working very well, but you have the feeling there are some references or connections there that we don't have. Then you create maybe also a kind of exotic situation that I want to avoid, because it's not, if the Iranian artist is here, she's not here to play the role of the Iranian artist. For me, she's really there. She stands for the quality of her work, first of all, and on top of that, she's coming from Iran. But it's very important not to create this kind of exotism, yeah, exactly.
This I find interesting. So you try to avoid exotism, and on the other hand, you have a certain feeling for Viennese taste, so to say. So what do Viennese people like or want or need?
I try, I'm here only since now 3 years, and as you said, it was not
an easy start.
An easy story. But it's true that I insist always that it was important for me to move here, of course, and to spend also quite some time here to understand exactly where I am, because I don't think it's interesting to do the same festival in Brussels than than in Tehran, than in Vienna. I am in Vienna, and one of my role is to get this sensibility here. But of course, you can never get one sensibility. But still, I believe a lot in certain sensibilities that are really specific to some places, and that's also the beauty of this. And it's really, I like your question because you were mentioning
but you didn't answer it.
Because it's about these two things. It's about this balance between the local and the international, how you put these two together. Because on one hand, you have to, I tend to say sometimes, to anchor a festival, if you know what, like a boat. It's in Vienna.
But what does the Viennese public need? Because I think we tend to be very local, so maybe we need some exotism and internationalism.
Yes. I think so, and I think it's a curious audience. I was not sure at the beginning, but the more and more I start to know a bit more the audience, there is a certain curiosity, but Schritt für Schritt, little by little. And
speaking of audiences, to some people, the Wiener Festwochen come off as a little elitist, especially when it comes to ticket pricing, etc. And now we're, especially in times like this when people are financially struggling and exhausted and everything, what can you offer young people who are in need of easy access to arts and culture?
Well, I think also it's an important question because it's time to question this institution and really to see, we need to diversify the audience. We need absolutely to diversify the audience, and we are and we will. And for instance, yes, definitely addressing a younger audience is a priority, not only for the Festwochen. I would say a little bit in general, cultural institutions are facing this problem. I don't think it's only a question of economy and ticket price. It's really also feeling that there is something there for them to find, and that they don't have the feeling that it's for my grandmother on Saturday or Sunday afternoon, but it's also a place I want to be part of. One of the projects we tend to develop is much more a certain idea of participation, that artists are also there not only to show their piece and then bye-bye and we go to the next city, but how we can create sometimes between a local scene and the international scene more interaction. For instance, we were talking about school, theater school, how artists coming from the festival can also contribute in a certain way here in the city to some educational program and really there's a lot still to do, I think, next to the Bühne to really also a bit maximize the interaction between audiences and artists.
That's really interesting because it kind of resonates with your own wish to be close to the artists. So you want the audience to also be close to the artists.
Yes.
So it's not like people are coming there and seeing things and then leaving, but
we should desacralize maybe also the figure of the artist as a kind of guru, which is part of another reality. I have so many great conversations with artists, and I would like that many people can have this kind of thing, because it's really sometimes such an opportunity to see things in a different way. We should break this idea of this is not part of my reality. It's a lot about, in English you say threshold. I don't know how you, and I think we are living in societies who tend sometimes to create a lot of these thresholds. And I think it's very important sometimes to try to break it, because there's so much things in meeting.
But we're actually also living in an era where we have never been so connected, but due to social distancing, so far away from each other. Where do you see the connection between isolation and solidarity through art? Because I must think that art has always served a good purpose during a crisis. So how can art connect people in times of social distancing?
Because, You know why I like art so much? Because of the uselessness of art. Because it's a space where basically nobody knows exactly what it is and why.
It's not efficient. So it's not part of the economy.
It's totally escaping this main, actually, aspect of everything that we have to negotiate with is part of this economy. Art is totally there. We don't know exactly what it is, where it starts, what to do with it. That's why it's so precious. And I think it should connect people because of that. I would not say it's a new religion. It would be terrible, but it's this kind of space, because it's not yet appropriated by economy and by efficiency. I believe a lot in the potentiality of the space of the art to connect ourselves. I always tend to say, I'm really coming not at all from an elite myself or from a family of really before me people super expert in the arts.
Your father is a pharmacist,
yes,
right?
Yes. And I always take it as an example that in a way, yes, it is possible because if there is something happening that the space of the art became very important to me. I cannot tell you why and how did it happen, but it became really a space where I could, express myself through it, not even by being myself an artist, but by relating to it. It brings me so much that I take it also as a mission nowadays to say, listen, you can really, it's transformative. I think it can absolutely be transformative, probably more than many other things. That's why I defend it very much, this space. We need to protect it.
Yeah, you said that art is kind of an escape from all these like economic structures, so people kind of must connect within this escapism.
Yes,
they're finding in art.
Yes.
Nada mentioned the fact that so many people are struggling financially at the moment, and we're really facing one of the most major crises, I think. You said that before. That makes me think of one interesting project, Alexander Seldin, who deals with these inequalities, right? So yes. I guess that was important for you to implant it? No, you don't say that in English. To implant it in the program?
Yes.
To embed it.
To embed it. But first, this word, for me, it's a strong concept, inequality. And he made a whole trilogy called The Inequalities, which I also like as a kind, what does that mean, the inequalities? That could be on many levels. And I think, first, I believe it's very beautiful theater, sensible theater, but I also felt content-wise it was the right moment to give a lot of exposure to these works. So we tried actually to present the three parts of the trilogy here in Vienna. It would have been the first time. Finally, we can manage only because all the the cancellation and change. We will have two of the three and probably maybe the third one next year. But the beauty of the theater of Alexander Seldin is, for instance, it's not new, but it's like mixing really highly professional actors with also people who are more performing their experience because themselves went through process of migration, poverty. So you have really this way or the stage become really the space where the experience and the representation are mixing together. It's extremely emotional without being cheesy but it's really going a lot into for me, the emotions of temporary shelter situation. It's a very British theater, let's say. I don't know if you know a bit. Yeah, you might know the cinema of Ken Loach, for instance. Very social realism, but of course it's super universal because it's not only a failing social system. Is not only in the UK or the Brexit consequences, these gaps, these enormous gaps between very rich people in the society and And yeah, it's a lot about community center, people who cannot have housing anymore and share with others. But it's always with a lot of humanity in it. And I must say, yeah, it happened not so much with me, but I was so in tears by watching this, just because I could not accept the reality that this theater, and even if this reality, I'm confronted with it every day, but this stage makes me so angry about the inequalities of this world. Yeah, I think it's something I really wanted to try to bring it this year. It was not easy, but I would advise that, because it's quite a name now in the UK. He started really working, like we say, community theatre, so more, and then he was picked up by the National Theatre in London, and now he's produced by them. But he's not at all yet known outside of the UK, a bit now in France, but in the German-speaking countries.
It's new.
It's new, yeah.
Nada and I, we were wondering, because there is an interview on YouTube, I think, or anywhere. We were wondering, you have been warned. People told you that Vienna can be tricky, that it can be, how do you say now?
A snake pit.
And it has a little bit of this reputation. So
that people are grumpy, not very nice.
And also maybe, but also tricky, sometimes false, and it's not such a comfortable place. But have these prejudices been confirmed, or did you make other experiences? We can cut this, of course.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, just tell us.
Yeah,
yes, off records.
You know what? Basically, I also like to go against prejudices. I think prejudices are only there to be contradicted. So I'm working a lot on contradicting these prejudices. I'm not totally there yet. I must say that sometimes I still a bit. But let's be honest, probably it's not the most Mediterranean city, super easy to open, direct. There's quite a lot of codes that if you're not part of it, it takes a little bit time as well to understand. Which doesn't mean, again, that it's totally closed or reluctant, but let's say it's
just
not
unknown.
It's unknown. It's unknown, and sometimes it takes time. And then when you understand and when you get it, it's fine, and it can also open up to something very nice, but it takes a bit time.
So you have to work around, you know, the way.
It's a lot working around. It's I would say it's
Nothing
not the
direct.
most direct and definitely not the most transparent. But
Schauen wir mal.
But honestly, I don't want to sound negative or definitely also not desperate, because it's also depend a lot. Some days I'm very euphoric, because there's also when you can actually in a way enter, that can be quite wonderful and nice. And when you start to understand how you have to get along with it, it can create nice things. But yeah, it's a process.
But I think one of Viennese specialities is really a sort of flexibility. And when we are talking about unpredictability, I think now in the crisis, Austria can show one of its really
the best qualities,
because we are quite flexible, because we are Balkanese people. So we are not so used. Well, there are strict rules, but it doesn't mean that we obey them, or there's always a way
no, indeed,
to get out.
You know, I really don't want to complain, because I think in my position and my job, it's such a wonderful place to be today, because I think still that the place of culture and the credits that is given to culture, that's quite unique. And this, it's a big chance for me. I mean, I was so surprised to see how people are talking about the culture still, or people are talking about the festival. It's serious. It's not a kind of and this it's valuable. I mean, the way I was talking to you a few minutes ago, how I believe art is precious. I feel here, it's really taking seriously. It's not always easy, But this is something I respect a lot and I enjoy a lot, for instance. And yeah, it's extremely angenehm to be in Vienna in general. I mean,
there are many people coming from the arts and culture space saying that, especially now in the crisis, that they feel forgotten or ignored, that arts aren't just that relevant to our system. Do you share this view?
I have sometimes also the feeling that maybe it's still to come. Vienna was a super metropole and very important center, intellectual, cultural, and I think maybe there's another time to come also, because of course the end of the empire, the Jewish community, in a way the destruction of the Jewish community, it has a lot of impact also on this city and the cultural and the intellectual life of the city. And I also feel that there was a lot of trauma that the city is still little by little, working on it. So I think there's a potential also. You feel that what you described maybe also to me, there is new communities, there is a kind of energy. I must say also that I have a lot of new colleagues also in the city. Art institutions are a bit in a kind of transition. Maybe I'm too euphoric, but I feel that there's many houses with changes, and there is something in the air that I think it's exciting to be in Vienna at the moment, because I think this city has really something to say in the coming years. This I feel.
Mm-hmm. As they say, after a crisis, only good times can come.
Yeah, after a crisis, only good times can come. We were talking about restrictions, but also about possibilities and potentials. We hope that this year's Wiener Festwochen rise like a phoenix from these hard times that we spent now. We want to wish the best to you and your team of the Wiener Festwochen. And happy birthday, Wiener Festwochen, because it turns 70 this year.
Thank you very much for this very nice conversation.
Thank you for being here. You were listening to the official Wiener Festwochen podcast with Clarissa Stadler and Nada El-Azar. Our guest was Christophe Slagmuylder. Designation was by Ursula Winterauer, and goodbye from Studio Wunderbar.